Case, recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and in support of the bill, with respect to my colleagues' studied remarks in opposition to this bill and taking a close look at these rules, I think really what's happening is the Endangered Species Act is working very, very well. In fact, probably way too well for some people. I think we're just completely on opposite sides of a perception of the Endangered Species Act overall. I think it has worked outstandingly over the decades. And I look to the numbers as well. I look to the numbers of 99% of the species endangered or threatened saved and on the road to recovery. I look at a situation where the economic benefits of the recovery of some of those species have been awesome as well from the recreational, tourism, historical perspective, whether you want to talk about gray wolves or salmon or whales or marine life. In fact, the Endangered Species Act has been one of our most successful environmental programs in decades, supported broadly by the American people. Yes, it is inconvenient in many ways. Yes, it does get in the way of other utilizations of land, exploitations in some cases. Yes, it does cost money to enforce. Yes, it does cause people to have to go through some hoops. But that's as it should be if the end goal is to preserve our endangered and threatened species. And so when I take a look at the rules, and I did take a look through the rules, what I really think was happening here behind the scenes was I think there was a team of about 100 lawyers that were scrubbing the rules for inconvenient hurdles in the rules that got in the way of somebody's attempt to utilize or develop their land somewhere, and inconveniently endangered species had to be accounted for. So when you take a look at the rules and you ask yourselves, well, what actually happened in these rules to change the Endangered Species Act application? Couple of categories. Preservation, cost-benefit introduced into the preservation equation, correct? It is not technically part of the analysis, but it's introduced into the discussion, and I think that is unfortunate. I think cost-benefit doesn't belong there. If we did cost-benefit on the endangered species, we probably wouldn't have any endangered or threatened species left. Time frame of impact, really current to foreseeable future as opposed to any long-term cushion. Scope of import, a direct impact as opposed to indirect impacts that perhaps we can't even foresee today. Cooperation among agencies, limited. Consultation, limited. It's really impossible to avoid the conclusion that the goal here of these rules was in fact to weaken, and in some cases to gut the Endangered Species Act. And to Mr. Costa's point, yes, it is driven, in my mind, also by a distrust of the motivation of this administration that is indicated not just by its actions on this particular bill, but across a range of issues having to do with natural resources. So I'm all for sitting down and walking through a realistic analysis of the Endangered Species Act that does, in fact, get to your concerns. But I don't think that the way to get to that end result is for this administration to ram these rules down, one of the most successful laws that we've ever had to protect. And I speak as the endangered species capital in Hawaii, where we've got 500 of the 1,200 endangered species, and where we also have major development pressure. So yes, I have all of those impacts as well. We've made a judgment that we want to save our species. I think we can all get there, but not by adopting these rules. I think we've got to toss these rules through this bill, start over in good faith. I'm fine with that.